I love this concept of the 25th hour because there is so much of processing being a doctor that doesn't necessarily happen when you're doing the medicine. It happens after, right? And it's not alone as a separate thing. We also talk about this work-life balance. It is all intertwined because it's intertwined in your brain, in your soul, in how you experience life. And so I think this is a great idea. My first shift, I'm very old now, so that is a long time ago. I do remember my first rotation as a sub-intern at Yale for medical school. And I remember the feeling being very similar to when I first started my medicine and pediatrics residency at Harvard. And so don't remember the exact first time, but I would tell you the general feel of the beginnings of those stories for me, which I have to say was somewhat exhilarated that I had just done it, right? Like, wow, like I have not only been in the hospital caring for patients, but I was the only one. I was there overnight. I had a team. I dealt with things when they came up. And it was a real feeling of exhilaration, almost a feeling of like, I'm pretty powerful. Like I can do these things. After all this learning, I'm finally now doing. So I think that was that first feeling that I had. And still, when I think about being a clinician, that's the thing I love. I love the act of doing, knowing that you can go in there and make a difference, knowing that it is not going to be easy for a variety of reasons. It is always hard. It is always different because the people are different. The diseases are never exactly the same. The circumstances are different. But that feeling of exhilaration, that was the first feeling. So let me tell you a story. I took care of adults with congenital heart disease, grown-up congenital heart disease. And one of my patients had, been with the doctor who was there before me and then transitioned to me from her pediatric cardiologist. And she ended up meeting her father to get some care as well. And even though I wasn't doing adult general cardiology, I did adult general cardiology, right? I took care of the floor. So he also became my patient. And so many years later, she got married and they had their father-daughter dance at the wedding. And I had been invited and I was sitting at the head table with the bride and the groom and their families and just me sitting there. And for a lot of the time I thought, I don't belong here. This is not my wedding. This is not my family. But when they got up to do, it makes me sad just thinking about it. It was lovely. When they got up to do their father-daughter dance, right? All you see on their wedding video is me ugly crying. Just this, crying and crying. Because it was such a moving moment where these two people were alive in part because of our team and our care. And they were such a part of our lives. So now I go back and answer your question. When going home, the first thing that I would do is tell my family about not the medical care, but the people I met, what the people do. And that continued to be that way throughout my 20 years of clinical practice. Is I met this person and they own a microbrewery. I met this person and they're one of the only in the 4% of commercial airline pilots are women. She was one of them. And so those stories, I think, those are the things that I carry home with me that I don't maybe think about when I'm standing there with them because I'm thinking about their medical care. But when I go home, I think about who is that person? So cool to have met that person. It is not always the last patient that you bring home with you. It's not always just one patient. But most times, one patient affects you more than the others during the day, whether that's in the office or it's on the floor. And it's hard. You need some time to process why you're feeling that way about that patient, what it is. And you often can't do it just that evening. In fact, sometimes you need some space and you find a week or two later then you can better process what was it about that day? What was it about that interaction, that patient, um, that made me feel that emotional way, right? So it's not easy. And I wouldn't try and tell people that in the 25th hour, you can just process your emotions and move on with your day. What you can do, and I recommend for everybody to do from a young age on, is get used to noticing. Get used to noticing your own feelings, whether it's in the situation with a patient, with another doctor, a nurse, a team, with your family at home. Get used to noticing your own feelings without judging them. Doctors are very much the type to either do. I don't feel anything. I just do. This is my job. And again, we talked about the exhilaration and I used to love running codes. I loved kind of being in charge, making things happen, figuring it out, whether or not you saved the patient. If the patient needed a good death, that was also a job, right, for me to do. But I didn't spend a lot of time noticing how I felt. And I think that is something I wish we would all have learned earlier. And I think in the curriculum now, we do, we'll debrief after a code. And when I first started, nobody debriefed after a code, right? Something happened, patient had thing, you did it, you moved on to the next thing. Now people stop, they talk, they process. But just noticing yourself, how you're feeling, very important. So learn to notice your feelings and not judge, though. And I think that's extraordinarily important. If you can do that in your 25th hour, fantastic. I think there's a lot of things. There's the privilege of how quickly someone who has just met you is willing to let you into their life. But as you think about it, I think there is a way to shift during exhaustion to say this might not be the right time to think about my career, right? I am exhausted. This is the right time to heal myself rather than I'm in the depths of it and therefore I will think about everything that is wrong with my life. There is a tendency to do that. And you give credibility to that tendency by simply asking the question, when you're exhausted, what do you think about your career? It's not the time to think about your career. It's not the time to think about your family after your baby's been crying all night, right? That is time to take for yourself and to heal. That's so true. And then think about what it is, right? With some objectivity. You can't be that objective when you're exhausted. It's not the time to make like and death decisions. He was in his 20s and was declined for a heart lung transplant from multiple institutions. So we knew there was no option. And we had gotten to know him very well because he had to live in the hospital. He was dependent on us, and his family we got to know well. And so we actually let him have a pizza party for his birthday. Now, as you know, with patients with heart failure, which is oftentimes, what we're talking about, that salt load is really just not tolerable, not acceptable. Kidneys can't deal, if heart can't deal with it. It's all he wanted. All he wanted was a pizza party. So we gave him a pizza party. And then within a day, he had a very good death, surrounded by his family, his friends, having had his pizza party. It's hard, but it's the right thing to do, right? The right thing to do for him, which I think at the end of the day is the most important thing. What does the patient want? The field of palliative care came up while I was training. It didn't exist when I first started. And it is such an important idea. We often think we're doing everything in medicine to avoid death. Nobody can avoid it. It's there. It's coming. It's coming at different paces. We want you to lead as healthy a life as you can. We want to use our technology, our medications, your lifestyle to support you. But there's a point at which it's really important to recognize that having a good death is a really important part of our responsibility for our patients, if that is what is to come. And so it was a hard goodbye, but it was the right goodbye for him. Next. Was one of the patients who helped me get into telemedicine because they didn't live close to Boston and really wanted to sometimes have these conversations, especially if I've already done their imaging. Why am I bringing them back in to talk to me? Let them stay home. Show them the imaging over the computer, right? And now we'll say, oh, this is all fine. Everybody does it. Back then, nobody did it. It was a new thing. And one of the patients who really pushed me to almost become who I am today. Uh, but I got to know the girlfriend who then became the wife as well. Used to see them together, really the whole family. And one day he had left the room for some reason. It was just me and the wife sitting together. And she said, we want to have a baby. And I thought this is a very difficult conversation because he knew he only had a few months left. So if he knew and he's young, had she not talked to her, had he not told her, this is my job, this is their relationship. Very interesting to have been part of their journey, but I'm not part of their relationship. So I hesitated. I said, I'm not sure, you should talk to him. And he said, no. She said, no, we together have decided that we want to have a baby. And so I still I thought maybe they don't understand. They fully understood. He came back in and she said, when he goes, I want some part of him for the rest of my life. And so he passed. Baby was born 3 months later. I still text with them. Baby's grown up now, doing great. But this comes back to what I was telling you. Who gives me the right to be this close to somebody else's life? You cannot get this kind of experience in any profession of medicine. So that's why when you go back and you say, first question, what do you remember after your 25th hour? When I was younger, I felt exhilarated. You're so excited that I can do this. And as I grew older, I felt really grateful that this is what I get to do for a living, right? So, oh gosh, there are a lot of things that's understood about just being human. So, I think one part is the pressure of being the last person, the one on whom everything falls. I love team-based care. I love being in a cath lab or an operating room. Longitudinally being responsible for my patients' care along with their primary care and their kidney doctor and their lung and whoever else. But we all take on this feeling of, at the end of the day, this is my patient, my responsibility, my operating room, and not in a obnoxious way, right? But I have to take full responsibility for everything that's happening here. And I think people can be misunderstood for that, right? As over-controlling or over. But I think you have to balance relying on other people, right, with getting the job done. It is different when somebody's life is in your hands, however, right? So there are big fiscal deals that can be done and other industries. And yeah, the whole team needed to work together, but the CEO is still at the base of it. And maybe they feel I've not done that. So maybe they feel a similar responsibility for the company, for the people. And so again, I go back to, humans in general are misunderstood, but having that sense of responsibility, and yet bringing everyone else along with you, that is a balance. And sometimes the balance is not perfect, depending on your day, the situation, what's happening. And so I think that's one of those areas where specifically physicians are sometimes misunderstood. There was a patient of mine who needed his third valve surgery. I think people who've heard me speak before probably heard me speak of this story. Need a third valve surgery, and this is kind of before age 48. And I really wanted to have them come to the office so I could sit and hold the hand, right? The way a doctor's supposed to, and say, I'm so sorry, it is time, we have to do this again. And my patient refused to come in to see me. Said, doctor, let's do the telemedicine thing. I said, I'm not going to tell you over video that you need a surgery. In my head, I said it to myself. And I said, no, like I told my administrative assistant at the time, I said, no, please, make them come in. She said, no, they're not coming in. They want the televisit. That's what you're going to do. Fine. I got on the televisit. I was very hesitant. They were sitting on a couch like this with their significant other. And finally I said, well, here's the echo findings. I'll show you is a CT. And, it's time. And he said, I had a feeling. And, she said, I also had a feeling. And we talked through it. And then the spouse left the room. It was just me and the patient. Still remember, he leaned in. Instead of looking like, we often look at the screen. So the other looked straight at the camera like clearly was not looking at the picture, right? Looked straight at me and said, "Thank you." And I thought, what are you thanking me for? This is your third surgery, right? This is a big deal. And I just kind of looked at him and he said, "Thank you. I know this was uncomfortable for you. I know that you wanted to sit next to me to tell me this news, but I needed to be home with my wife and my 3 kids because they are the only reason I would do this a third time. So this will stay with me forever. It's why I do what I do today." Oh gosh, I have a lot of advice. I'm trying to kind of coalesce it into one piece, which is, first of all, don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. There's no purpose in it. It doesn't get you anywhere. That level of unnecessary stress. Um, Work hard and stay focused. Because if you work hard in a million different areas, you're going to get tired and you may not achieve what you could if you just focus and then work hard. So be easy on yourself at the same time. Work hard and focus. And I'd say the third thing is stop comparing yourself to others. Even if you have people you look up to. I told one of my friends this recently. She's a mother of a child, same as my younger daughter's age. She's a little younger than me. And she said, "Oh, this really great physician that I looked up to said I did a good job. I'm so proud of myself." And I said, you should just be proud of yourself. Not proud because that great physician said something to you. And that is a tendency we have in medicine, to always compare to somebody or feel that somebody who's ahead of you, liking you or approving of you is the ultimate goal. And it's not. It's being proud of yourself and what you're doing. And so don't spend so much time comparing. If I told you my story now, sure, I could tell you a great story. I did this and then my patients made me do that. And now I'm digital and I do innovation. When I was moving forward, I had no idea what was next. And you don't either. You just try the next step and the next step. And sometimes the step goes here and it goes there. So go easy on yourself. Don't create self-stress. It's not worth it, right? Focus when you do work hard so that you achieve. And don't compare to others. Just live your course. They are not a patient first. They are a human first. You have to find the human connection first to be able to care for them. You just have to. Now, yes, if a patient is passed out and you need to, that's different. But assuming you're meeting somebody in the hospital, in the office, they're a person first. You have to take the time to make that association before you care for them. And your care will be better. Your care will be better because you will understand more about them, not just them as a disease, and they will trust you more. And you need both of those things. You need to understand them as a human, not as a disease, and they need to trust you. That's how the best care happens. So if you remember that, it's very easy to bring empathy because you walk in and you say, who is this human? Who is this human? And then move on from there.